This is the Heroes Podcast. I'm so excited today. I have someone special for you. The name is Paige Frisone. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful that we can connect with each other across many countries, across different parts of the world. So thank you for making time for me today.
I'm so excited. And I will intro you just for the audience so they know Paige is a subconscious health practitioner, inspired speaker dedicated to helping people heal sustainably by processing both known and unknown traumas that live in the invisible brain. I love that. I haven't had that term before. The same part that signals present day disease, disorder, dysfunction, and emotional life stress. Paige, Colorado-based integrative practice, Inner Realm Wellness LLC, services people internationally and is dedicated to helping people fill the gaps of conventional health protocol. Wow, I really love this. So tell me, Paige, how did this happen? People don't normally run businesses in Colorado, helping people all around the world. Where did it start? Like, how have you come to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's been a long journey. I feel, and I've said to people multiple times recently, I've lived a lot of lives in my life. And I think we all can relate to that for sure. But I have a journey of tons of suffering, tons of trial and error, essentially coming to a place of being really clear about what doesn't work in order to find for myself and to help other people find what really does. So I have a history of anorexia, severe depression, anxiety, self-harm, essentially every type of trauma that you could imagine. And I was stuck in the Western system for a very long time. I use that word stuck lightly just because it has its time and place. And I'm so grateful to have received the care that everyone around me thought I needed at the time. And it also helped clarify for me, again, the things that are currently in that system that might work and the things that are in that system that might not. And I've been in therapy since I was 7. I suffered from chronic night terrors in the most developmental years of my life. So from ages 1 to ages 7, and nobody knew what was wrong. And I was not able to have a vocabulary to speak it to the people in my world. So that essentially developed into a lot of disorder and dis-ease later in my life in high school. And I also recently, within the last 2 years, unveiled a ton of repressed memories about sexual trauma from childhood that I essentially had completely lost. And so I, up until age 26, was living a life of having no memory, like no chronological sequence of my life. And I never knew that that was a direct indicator of trauma. So I'm super passionate about unveiling those things and helping people get to the root of what their trauma, their stress, their disorder is. And I really feel passionate about it because of the life that I've lived and the walks that I've walked.
This is such a powerful thing. I come across at times people who have the mind decided two painful memories, they shut it down, they get disconnected, and then they don't understand that it does create a lot of experiences because it was left unresolved. Well, you mentioned you didn't have the vocabulary to voice your whatever issues. Was that a language problem, or was that you didn't have other skill sets to be able to share your trauma? So what was going on?
I mean, so to start, I was a kid and I had gone to therapy when I was 7, and they would ask me every day, what's going on? What happened? What happened last night? What happened in your night terrors? What happened in school? What happened with your friends? And they're asking these questions that I could only answer in a very topical way, because to the next person on paper, everything was fine. I had friends, I was in school, I loved learning. I was also being bullied at the time, but I didn't have any ability to communicate those things.
Hmm.
And that's the result of trauma. That's the result of just being so trapped in it and not having that subconscious part be able to come to the surface in a safe way. And I now know that that's because I was in survival mode chronically. And when we're surviving, we can't actually feel safe enough to process. And so I was really working with limited information. And on top of that, the nature of chronic night terrors is for me that I would go to bed every night knowing I would be invaded and knowing I would wake up screaming, but not having any recollection of what happened the next day. So there was a complete disconnect between my daytime life and my nighttime life. And those formative years where our brains are wet cement and we're still developing, our concrete motor skills and concept of life and self-image and safety, this was completely blown out of proportion for me because I wasn't able to regulate on my own or get the support that I needed, even when people tried. And so that is something that has continued to manifest in my life, even today, in a certain way that's very unique. And I like to categorize it in the way of psychic or spiritual trauma as it pertains specifically to night terrors. And I've had bouts of medical emergencies. I've gone months without sleeping. Later in my life, I have completely forgotten how to sleep. My body goes into complete survival like it did when I was a kid. So there's a lot about those symptoms that I appreciate being able to help people through today because I've been there and I know how complicated it really is.
Oh, well, I would love to talk about this separately. Yet, would you say, just going back to how and why they couldn't help you, would you say they were not qualified or didn't have enough rapport, or they didn't create a safe space for your healing? What was it that kept you in that loop?
Well, on a professional level, because I experienced trauma after trauma almost on a daily level, there was no way for me to be able to consciously articulate what was happening because it was all subconsciously driven. It was all under the surface. Like anything we're experiencing that we would never choose is coming from that invisible place. And I feel so passionate about this in the conventional therapy world today because I don't think that people in that world generally have the education or awareness of the subconscious mind. When you're sitting across the couch from a therapist, they're asking you topical questions about what you're experiencing right here, right now. But we are all accumulations of our past. And even if we consciously talk about our past, it doesn't mean that we're focusing on the root because we can't access the root from our conscious mind. And so I think that, again, on paper, like the resources were there. I'm so grateful. I had, teachers that were looking out for me. I had therapists in school. I had therapists out of school. I had, like my parents cared a lot. They obviously were very affected by sleepless night after night when I'm screaming throughout the night. And I had this whole routine. I had regimens and protocol to help keep me calm and safe, and to no avail. And so I remember going to a Western hospital where they wanted to hook my brain up to certain wires and figure out what was wrong with me. And I remember, my aunt working really hard to get me some help more on the Eastern end of things on an energetic level. And that was super helpful too. But it spiraled into all of these other ways of me not being able to cope in my life because I was introduced to the invisible realm so young. Like dreams and night terrors and nightmares are all very mystical experiences. So to answer your question, like I would never say that those therapists or those resources were unqualified. I just think systemically, there's not the proper education to help inform them about getting to the root cause versus meeting them where they are in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand. And I will take it that they were not able to resolve it. Unfortunately, that's what I have to say. And at times, certain challenges require specific knowledge or understanding of the mind. And I do have a friend here, and she talks about sometimes about spookies, and she talks about entities, and there's a whole new world out there, or it's always been there, but of course, some of the Western medicine or science, what they are applying, has not even considered it to be true or a cause of any psychological or even, you know, a everyday challenge. So I think definitely you made a point of that we need to open the door to alternative ways to look at problems. And I had myself a very interesting experience where we just worked through asthma with my son for the last 6 months, and it wasn't a breathing problem. It was very more to do with emotions, and a sound healer brought the biggest change to this thing. And I see parents around us, and they say, well, asthma is incurable. The doctor said it, so we just give our son or daughter steroids. So I mean, I can't believe how restricted approaches are out there. So tell us, how did you break out of this? Because this could have been holding you back in every area of life, right?
Oh, yeah. And, I'm human, so I still struggle. I still have a lot of stuff, particularly around sleep, that I don't think is quote unquote normal for the non-traumatized person. At the same time, I took myself off prescription medication 4 years ago, and I feel like that system, in the way I was immersed in it without success, did me wrong. I don't feel that that's a blanket statement that I would ever make for anyone else, but my experience led me to the greatest awakening of my life, which is that I took the agency, I took myself into a place of letting myself heal. And I always want to disclaim, I don't recommend doing that. Like, I would never advocate for somebody else going cold turkey off their medication. That is not an MO of mine. It's just what happened for me. And I really had this divine connection where I really do actually say I was taken off medication instead of I took myself off, because 10 days in, I was looking at my medicine and I was like, oh gosh, what do? I don't really want to refill this, because I know every time I take it, I don't feel good about myself. I feel like I'm crazy. And that was my experience. And so getting myself off 6 or 7 different pills I didn't even know why I was taking. Again, it was an accumulation of all these years I spent in the treatment system. And so when I gave myself the time, the space to let my body come back to balance, I literally became a different person. And I really became who I always was, but I had to get the layering out of the way. And it actually brought me to a place of equilibrium and homeostasis. And it took a solid year or 2 years to fully detox from that, which isn't fun. But it also gave me more resourcing in myself to be able to handle the difficulties of life. And so that was the beginning of the rest of it. And then everything else kind of fell into place. I started integrating, again, these repressed memories that came up, and then using the tools that I had learned throughout my life that I needed when I was younger. Like, I learned about the subconscious, both professionally, personally, and academically. I learned about integrative medicine, and I learned about Eastern and Western combined instead of just one or the other. And it was the only thing that started to make sense because of the things I had experienced. So that's kind of what kickstarted where I am today.
Would you say, because I've heard that piece when you said you took yourself off medication, and I would never recommend this to anyone. But what I have found at times, Western medicine has not got any better tools to deal with things as to medicate. And I found a lot of times that people find a way to live with their challenges, yet medication almost masks the problem that need to be faced. It may not necessarily be at all times. Would you want to expand on this? So would you say sometimes the solution is so temporary, it does not help the person to deal with the real thing that needs to surface and resolve, and that creates the space for people like you who could then have a new way of healing, or myself too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hard. Like, I'm not here to bash Western medicine. I really think that there's a time and a place for it, like I mentioned, but systemically, it's hard to receive the benefits that that system is supposed to provide without looking at the shadow of the system. And that goes for anything and everything. Like, I want people to be discerning about not just how they're receiving care, but why they're receiving it, right? And when they're receiving it in their lives. Like, we get to be co-creators as patients, as clients, with our practitioners, our doctors, our experts. And if they, in any way, shape, and form, are disempowering you or not giving you the whole story or actually doing more harm, it's not a fit. And that's subjective and very nuanced work. And I have found on a systemic level, so I'm not talking about individual healthcare people, not talking about individual doctors or people who are the exception or people who are pure out there because they exist. I'm talking about a systemic level of corruption that exists on a higher level, where historically Western medicine, which is a newer form of care versus the ancients of Eastern and traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and energetics and all these other things. Historically, Western medicine only tends to the body versus the mind, body, spirit connection. And I was reading a source recently that's all about vibrational medicine and the science of it, which is where I geek out, because I'm like, yeah, energy is everything, but let's talk about how that's actually fact and not just a thought that you keep thinking. And I was reading this source about like homeopathy and how the Western world thinks homeopathy is kind of woo-woo and crazy because it has the ability to access what symptoms or dis-ease is brewing in your light body before it hits your physical body. That is so freaking cool. That is the point of why we exist as humans on the planet, is to heal ourselves, is to be preventative. And when we go into a doctor's office, the truth of the matter is we're actually treating ourselves by reacting to something instead of healing the root. And so there are a lot of ways to integrate Western and Eastern together, but it requires, again, that client empowerment, that client education to know, like, it's okay if you feel like you need to take those pills, that's fine, as long as it's not your long-term solution. And that at the end of the day, just knowing that the Western system is more profit-based, it's less people-centered, right? It's more pill-focused, it's more quick fix, more temporary, more band-aiding. There's a lot of complications involved in that on an emotional level, because emotionally people start getting medically traumatized, they start getting wounded, and now we have to uncouple and heal the layers of wounding that have occurred just by subconscious association, just by nature of you taking those medications. Because it's not just take the pill and run, it's have a psychiatrist, have a doctor, have a PCP, like have all of these people on this team that might be telling you the same thing over and over again, or creating certain beliefs that don't feel good for you, or they might even be giving you conflicting information because everybody's different. So it's just a matter of like, where is your agency in that? And because it's such a dominant lens in our society, it can be a lot harder for us to like locate ourselves, our intuition, and what choice we really have in our healing.
I love this insight. I love how you have worded it, because yeah, I tend to see it's sometimes a sign up for life in the traditional system, and there is definitely a type of science that is backing up how they are able to give modern medicine as a solution. And of course, they are, I hate to say it this way, but I can't say it any better way. Sometimes they just still see human as a piece of flesh and then measure something in that piece of flesh and then fix that one thing. Of course, there's so much more to a human being that is excluded from this assessment or even the healing procedures. So what was there another big awakening for you before you started to operate? When did you start, and how you eventually started your own journey to help others?
Yeah, I know that the medication piece is really the big catalyst, but prior to that, I would say it was earlier in my 20s. I'd say when I was 20, I had a spiritual awakening, which is not the same as like this medical awakening. I mean, it was still spiritual for me in that way too. But when I was 20, I had this spiritual awakening that I'm so grateful for, because prior to that, due to all the trauma and all the layers of just disconnect and suffering, I really, truly did not believe there was anything on the planet more than just humans. And I had a very linear idea of what existence was really all about. And that kept me really stuck. It kept me really in pain. And I had an awakening in a treatment center, actually, and I'm so grateful for it. I was woken up at 6 a.m. I was told to grab my phone to take notes. And I heard just some really rambling voices. One of them said, use body to make art. And I had been in a place where I was like destroying myself and my body was not my friend. So the fact that this message came through of like, use body to make art, it wasn't quite about that message, because that was like, what does that mean to me? Like, I'm not an artist, I'm a writer. I know I'm here to like heal, but I don't know anything beyond what that means. And the other thing that came through was use body to make love connection to other. And this is such a beautiful, disconnected, but very cohesive message at once. Both of these messages came through, and beyond the words that were said, it literally shifted my vibration, my energy tenfold. I feel like I was jumping rounds because I had been in such a low place. And all of a sudden I was operating from this hugely energized, stamina-based place of like, whoa, there's something more here. After that happened, I spent my entire next 6 months at the library reading every single spiritual book known to man. And I learned a lot. I started playing with energy. I started thinking about what other influences are out there as far as like our guidance that exists and what consciousness is and how to access our greater intelligence and our higher self and our intuition and all of these things that I really knew within me, but were so bogged down by the shadow. That didn't make the shadow necessarily any less heavy. I was still super struggling at that time, but it was my guiding light to just be in this curious place of what else is there. And I never looked back. And to this day, I'm an extremely spiritual person. That's very unique to me. It's very personal. That word means something different to everybody. And even though I'm a very spiritual person, and there might be some energetic / spiritual components to the work I do now, it's not all spirit. It's like spirit plus science. It's this transpersonal lens. And I began to move myself from Chicago, where I was at the time, to Colorado. I was like, I don't even care. I'm just moving out there. I'm moving for the sunshine. I'm moving for the environmental medicine. And I took myself to school, and I struggled to stay in school because I was in and out of treatment for the next 5 years. But again, once I got off medication, I had already been learning about integrative methods, Eastern medicine. I had been taking apprenticeships for botany, botanical medicine, flower essences. And I had this subconscious healing mentor because he worked with my mom and he had been on my journey for many years. He helped me when I was in the thick of some stuff. And after learning all these different types of healing processes, I circled back around to him and I was like, this is the thing that I think I resonate with the most because it's so all encompassing. In the work that I do, we incorporate over 14 different modalities from Eastern and Western medicine combined. So I'm so grateful because in school I could study each of those individually, but then with this system that I learned, I could do it on a different level, a more unique and nuanced level. And so that just kind of allowed me to build the practice that I have now.
What a powerful self-worth transformation it was, that awakening. I just realized that until that point you lived a small and limited version of you, and someone just opened the door, or maybe from above, then you started to show up and you had all that energy to uncover what's behind the veil, and now helping other people. 14 modalities. Impressive. So what happens when someone, let's say, comes to you? And I understand you have no boundaries as far as helping people. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I as a person, I'm a huge chameleon. I love serving whoever resonates with me personally, because beyond tips and tricks and modalities and techniques, like I want my clients to feel a connection with me more than anything, because it's about co-regulation. And if I get to be a safe container to co-create with them, that I feel transcends anything and everything else. And so I really want clients to feel empowered and knowing that, yeah, I will take them through a journey for sure, but I'm a mere guide, and the innate wisdom they have to heal is already within them. It's just about maybe a little bit more education, maybe a little bit more awareness. And then from there, actually changing the root cellular memory so that you can start operating from a different vibration. So I might see clients in the mental health world. I see that a lot: depression, anxiety, addiction of all kinds, trauma of all kinds, complex PTSD. And then a lot of people with chronic symptoms as well. So people who are just struggling with the physical body. Oh my gosh, why do I have migraines? Why do I have sinus problems? Why do I have stomach aches? So it just is a beautiful attractor field. I've cast a really wide net, because if somebody is experiencing something, even if that means thoughts of I hate myself, or relational dynamics of why can't I feel more worthy in my relationship, if you're experiencing something that you want to shift on a mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual level, I do feel subconscious healing is the place to start.
I absolutely agree. And that's why probably we connected so well, because my understanding is illness, sickness, symptoms are probably in the 90% to do with emotions or the subconscious. What is your take on this? What would you say?
So specifically, what's my take on?
Yeah, on what is causing illness, sickness, disease? What would you say? Is it, what's the percentage on a 100 scale? I'm really
Yeah,
keen to hear.
100%, I would say what's causing disease are emotions. 100%. And really what it is like, it's the memories that are stored within us to keep us safe and to help us survive certain situations that trigger emotions at that moment of survival that we can't process. And so we can't, like I said before, we can't survive something really traumatizing and process our emotions at once. Those are two different parts of the brain that go into complete conflict. And so when we finally get to that safe and resourced place, we feel better for the time being, but we get triggered over and over and over again every couple seconds or minutes or weeks or months with that same root trauma that we didn't heal. And so that's why when you introduced me, I love that you had said, I help people heal from the traumas we know we experienced, but also the traumas we don't know we experienced, because we are really infinite beings with infinite memories, and our brains are like cameras. We take snapshots every few seconds, and those memories are informed by senses. So our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, sense of touch, that's how we process our lives. And if we were in an environment, let's say at 2 years young, where we remember not feeling safe, that same lack of safety is going to show up at any moment of our life until we heal that feeling at age 2. So when we have physical symptoms, they are merely attached to an emotional charge based on memories that first experience that thing. So I was just reading this thread the other day, and it was amazing because it was similar to what you had mentioned about asthma. It was about this guy who had been allergic to shellfish his entire life. And he knew that it was lethal, and everyone around him in the doctor's world and in, his family and his friends are like, don't eat shellfish, you're going to die, And so that his environment reinforced that belief that really felt like his truth, because when we don't know any better, we just live through these very limiting beliefs. And that doesn't mean that somebody who's allergic to shellfish should start going to eat shellfish right away. Like, there are certain things that we can do to get there if that's a goal of yours. But he eventually got to a place in his recent life where he was like, I realized the first memory I have of shellfish, I was in a traumatizing experience of like getting bitten by a crab or like whatever it was. That memory was the memory that was associated with this allergy. And from like an emotional standpoint, when we're allergic to something, it equates to like not being able to digest it, not being able to literally or metaphorically digest it. So when we can emotionally work with that gut, which is, our solar plexus, that's our self-worth center. When we can heal that memory that's associated with those feelings of I can't do this, or this will kill me, or I don't like it, or whatever those beliefs are that we create around that memory, then the physical body starts to heal, and the physical body is like, oh, I can eat shellfish now. So it was an amazingly affirming story just to be able to hear where he currently was. And, we can all get there if we want to.
Yeah, I hear a lot of these stories from the past, limiting experiences. And if I want to project that maybe into the future, because you may see as well that the more people are living their limited life, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, because the more of these limiting beliefs they usually take on. So you may have seen as well, and I don't know if they contact you, elderly people, they really close themselves up in a box. They haven't got much space anymore to experience life, because all they have is these patterns of limitations.
Absolutely. And yes, we start seeing literally on a cellular level, on a sensory level, we start perceiving, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing through the lens of I can't do it, or through the lens of I'm not worthy. And then we filter life through that lens, and we only start experiencing experiences of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, this will make me sick. And unfortunately, at the time that belief was imprinted in us, if only we had the tools at the time to heal at that moment, if only we were capable of healing at that time of original occurrence, because now it gets more complex, it gets more layered, it gets reinforced by not only our internal environment, but our external environment. Somebody might go to therapy and say, let me show you all the reasons why I know I'm not worthy. And it just keeps reinforcing it. And then we know with how powerful the mind is, if we keep saying the thoughts in our head, we're going to keep living through that frequency. And so it feels like those limiting beliefs have always been a priority in my work with clients, because I don't just want to identify the limiting belief, but I want to help them upgrade their sensory memories that are associated with that belief. And once we can upgrade those sensory memories, we rewire the cells of the body to the point where we're starting to think different thoughts, we're starting to feel different things, we're starting to actually experience more evidence to support our newer vibration than the older vibration. So it's kind of like a game. Like, I really like to see it in this playful way versus like, oh my gosh, this is really intense. It can be intense, but I love healing. Like, I'm a healing enthusiast. I've been initiated into healing very young in my life. And so I love therapy. I love all forms of non-conventional therapy as well. And I'm so happy to, again, just help clients find whatever works for them based on wherever they are in their journey.
And would you say the key aspect of healing, and that's a bit of my experience, I really would love to hear your take, is to create connection. And probably because some of these clients, I'm guessing they are coming from the Western traditional world. So you may be really crushing their beliefs to 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 be able to say, look, you can heal from this, to have you believe in them, even if you're the only one, and create that safe space is the biggest part of starting that journey of healing.
I always love to say to people, you don't have to be committed to healing right now, but you do have to want to be committed at some point. And if you have that willingness to do something different, to feel a different way, that's the energy that can carry us into the next version. We don't have to know the details of why or how or when or where, but holding on to that feeling is enough for now. And then if we can thread along that feeling with another feeling of like, oh, maybe this can get better. Not just a thought, but a feeling, like the actual chemical of that feeling. And then from the, this might be able to get better, to like, okay, how can I help myself get better, right? Who do I need to help me get better? What support might feel good for me right now? Like that internalized inquiry feels so important, because I'm not here to do anything for someone else. Like I can't do anyone else's work for them. I would love to. I'm a super cheerleader, but I know that that only gets so far, because the words that we say to somebody only get so far. It's the grooves underneath the surface of having to go from the bottom up versus the top down that make the most impact. So I always say to people like, a willingness is the way, and your willingness today might be different than your willingness tomorrow. But, you know, I love this quote that's like, showing up is more than half the battle. Showing up is 80% of life. And I am a very loyal client. I love therapy. Like I want to reemphasize, I love therapy, even though I know its limitations, and everything has limitations. And so it's not about me proposing one way or another way. I'm not a therapist for certain reasons, because again, I know kind of a different route that I feel like is helpful. It doesn't have to be the only route. You can pair it with a conscious technique like therapy. I think that that's brilliant. Subconscious and conscious work together. So it's not really about me convincing somebody of my way or convincing them that they can heal. I actually want to show them that they can. I want them to know in their bones for themselves that this is the truth. It's the divinity of our life, that we're here to heal and be whole no matter what. So hopefully that answers your question. One of my favorite things to say, it's actually on my business card. The tagline is, you are the light you seek. I'm here to help you prove it.
Oh, this is deep. And have you got any sort of tips to the audience? Someone who has been maybe battling, maybe trying so many ways to heal certain aspects of their health. What would be the 3 or 5 things to start doing, or maybe not doing, to change in their head or in their emotions to start a new journey?
Great question. Okay. There's so many things flooding. So the first one is tend to your senses. Tend to your senses in a way that will change your environment. So use aromatherapy. Use the smells that feel good for you. Find one, whether it's cinnamon, clove, sandalwood, lavender, frankincense, eucalyptus. Like find a really pure smell that will connect you with yourself every single day. Same thing for, you know, sense of sound. Find ambient music, find a guided meditation, find really calming instrumental piano music, or something that will keep your ears grounded throughout your day. Even if you're in public, busy streets, ambulances all around, super dysregulating. So make sure that you're tapped into something that can keep you with you. Same for smells, right? If, we did smell. So aromatherapy, we have sound, we have sense of sight. So this I like to talk about as far as your environment at home. If you want to put up posters or post-its of affirmations or window crystals or more lamps or paint your walls, like everything you see every second of the day matters. Okay, so sense of taste. How you eat food is important. It's not necessarily about what you eat as much as it's about how you eat. I really believe that. And so just being aware of your sense of taste while you're eating so you can enjoy it a little bit better. And then sense of touch, if you have crystals or rocks or stones or, things that you can hold to keep you in a safe space, that feels really important as well. So tackling the senses, that's number one. Number two, I would say, is a lot of journaling work, but not journaling in a way where you're talking about all the things that aren't working for you. Really using journaling in a way where you can write your mantras, you can write your lyrics down, you can write your passages that are positive, you can write your goals, your dreams, like all the things that will lift you up and keep you in a creative place. So we have the senses, we have the journaling, and then the third thing, which I briefly touched on already, is like mental emotional diet. This is like, what are you watching? What are you doing on social media? Who are you following? Who do you need to not be following, right? Like, just be aware of your energy and your energetic influence. So what you're taking in, what you need to call in. There's so many uplifting documentaries out there about this work that we're talking about modern science. So picking up books like Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Louise Hay, all the people that will lift you up and prove and help you prove everything that we're talking about today. The Heal documentary on Netflix, right? Like on and on and on. One thing will lead you to another, but you just want to start somewhere. So as long as you start, you will find your way.
It's a lot. It was a mouthful, but I appreciate you sharing this because, yes, if you listening to this and you want to set yourself up, then you need to participate. You need to participate in your own healing, in your own. I usually just say two things. Be mindful of what you feed your mind and feed your body. That's the baseline of change. And of course, if you're able to find a specialist who is qualified like Paige through 14 types of modalities of healing, well, you got quite a variety to apply, the one that works for you. So how can people find you, Paige? Is there a website? Is there a phone number? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is a great way just to have tons of resources, including what we've chatted about today, and tons of interviews, podcast audio, as well as more of like a breakdown of what we'd experience in a session together. So my website is my business name. So it's www.innerrealmwellness.life, innerrealmwellness.life. And then you'll find that tagline is the same across all my social media platforms, where I also have tons of resources and free content. So that for Instagram is at Inner Realm Wellness. For Facebook, it's at Inner Realm Wellness. For TikTok, same thing, at Inner Realm Wellness. So I really work hard to just give people as vast amount of options as possible to reach me however feels best for them. So those are likely the best ways.
Who would you need to connect with? So if I ask you about the next 5 years of your life, I'd love to look at 5-year term. What would you need to be celebrating in 5 years' time? Who would you need to connect now, if someone watching this episode, to help you to get there?
That's a beautiful question. Gosh. I have complete and full trust that just as my life has kind of been one thing leading to the next, I completely know that this is perfect as is. And my hope is that it reaches the right people who need support or who want support or know somebody who wants support. And so in 5 years from now, I have no doubt in my mind that I will be serving exactly who I need to be serving. And I think my clients show me what it is that they need, and I really take that feedback and I move in that direction. I, like I mentioned, cast a really wide net, but going forward, I really have a passion for supporting the mental health community, the people who have been in the Western world who need something else, whether that means depression, anxiety, any type of trauma, any type of addiction. Like, I want to connect with people that are in the therapy world, who are in the treatment world, who know that we need each other. It's not about one or the other. It's about how can we support each other, build our referral networks, be able to really support the client to find their dream team, to find who would best support them. I also love connecting with acupuncturists and physical therapists and nutritionists and people, again, who might be specializing in one specific thing, who need something a little bit broader, because I find that when you have something specific and then something that's really vast, those things can work really well together, as well as somebody who's working more consciously and pairing that with somebody who's working subconsciously. So there's truly infinite ways to connect and collaborate. And I really think that in 5 years from now, I will be really clear about who and what type of demographic would like this support the most.
Very powerful. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up this wonderful and deep conversation about sickness, illness, and health?
Yeah, I so appreciate this time. And I just encourage everyone listening, like, if you need to listen to this, if this needs to become your meditation, go for it. Like, don't hold back. These words, again, because they're just words, they only go so far, but also they speak frequency. They speak the vibration that's behind it. So really take your time to, like, not just hear the words, but feel the words, see what resonates for you, and let the organic unfolding begin, and totally work to trust yourself and your wisdom, because you're brilliant and you're here for a reason. So I'm here to support however I can. I so appreciate your platform. Thank you for having me on today.
Paige, thanks you very much. And we will drop your details under the video so people can reach out to you. Again, it was a special time, and I hope we will catch up soon in the future. Take care.
Absolutely. Take care.